neon lights flashing in the dark of the night. I'm playing Pac-Man, it's my second life. The joystick's in my hand, I'm unstoppable. High score secrets, I've got them all unlocked. Memories rush back like a time machine. Takes me back to the arcade, where I spent my younger days. In the black lights glowing on a pocket full of tokens. Dance and groove to the beat, on the pixelated screen we meet. New wave melodies playing loud, lost in the arcade, my heart is found. Big hair and red fashion, we were all quite a sight. Popping tokens in the cabinet, it's the thrill of the fight. We saved the world through pixelated dreams. We're the greatest generation with unfaded acid genes. Take me back to
Hi, welcome to day 4, our last breakout sessions of the evening, and we're kicking it off with really, I think, a wonderful conversation about bias in education and the harms of AI. We have Tom Mulaney here, who's a former teacher who uses his special education and instructional design background to help teachers design inclusive lessons with creativity, collaboration, and fun. Tom's public education experience includes special education, social studies, educational technology coaching, and digital design. He's an Adobe for Education creative educator, innovator, and Google for Education certified innovator and trainer who has spoken at national conferences, including South by Southwest, the National Council for Social Studies, and ISTE. Tom, thank you for joining us tonight. I've loved all the content that you've been posting with the Week of AI hashtag, talking about the harms of AI and just sharing wonderful articles that are thought-provoking and definitely a topic that we don't have enough discourse around for sure.
Thank you, Amanda. It is an honor to be here, and I genuinely appreciate your offering your platform like this. It's really awesome of you. So thank you.
Thank you. So if you notice, we've been kind of dropping hints. Tom did not have an AI sprite, and we're going to go into the why.
Oh, yeah, I will talk about that. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up your presentation and let you get started.
All right. Well, thank you all. We'll try to be done by 8:35. Welcome to the harms of AI, what the hype doesn't tell you. And I will say, imagine being the prosecutor of, Sam Bankman-Fried or Elizabeth Holmes and being told you can present your case in 30 minutes. How do you pick from all the evidence? So I will do my best. I may have to skip some content. At the very end, I'll share my documentation with you in the chat, and you can then go and look at all that stuff. So thank you, Amanda, for your introduction. I'm going to go quickly over that real quick. All I want to say is that I'm a tech-forward educator. I've been involved in ed tech spaces for at least 10 years now. And I will say, I love Figma's FigJam, right? I do a lot of stuff with Google Docs. Word processing apps, collaborative whiteboards, there's no inherent bias in those tools. And when experts are saying, hey, generative AI amplifies bias, December 2022, January 2023, I said, okay, great. Hurry up to shut up and listen. And so I did not even post about generative AI in education until February 2024, just this past February. And so a lot of the things I learned in that year plus of studying it is what I'll be sharing with you tonight. All right, scrutiny. I'm going to ask and beg and plead. Everything I say and tell you tonight, please scrutinize it. Don't just accept what I'm saying. Please look at the evidence I'm citing, the sources I'm citing, the voices I'm elevating, scrutinize all of it. And I would ask all the Week of AI sessions, especially when you go back and watch them on YouTube, apply that same scrutiny. And anytime you are in AIPD, apply that same scrutiny. Your critical thinking cap is essential. The frame. Why am I putting a frame here? Because throughout this session, I want to have a little concept that we keep the people in the frame, That's one of the experts I'll cite, always talks about keep the people in the frame. All right. So that's going to be like kind of a guiding principle for our session tonight. So what are you worried about with generative AI? I'm going to invite you to put in the comments, what are you worried about when you think about generative AI? What do you think are the harms? Because we're a little rushed for time, I may not get to speak to them, but I'm really curious what you have to say. All right, let's get into the story of generative AI. And we start where we have to start, with this. This is on the dangers of stochastic parrots. Can language models be too big? From now on, I will refer to this as the Stochastic Parrots paper. This was released in late 2020. It is the seminal piece of research and scholarship around generative AI. It's actually specifically about large language models. If you have had Intro to AI PD that does not reference the Stochastic Parrots paper, you're missing out. We're going to start correcting that tonight. Three of the authors I'll talk about: Dr. Emily Bender, she's a computational linguist at University of Washington, and Dr. Timnit Gebru and Dr. Margaret Mitchell, who at the time were the co-leads of Google's AI ethics team. So the Stochastic Parrots paper identifies two main issues with LLMs: bias and environmental racism. And I know what you're thinking. Tom, I came for harms of AI. What are we talking about? Environmental racism. Well, I hope I don't have to rush too fast, but we will get to that. Now, what do we mean by stochastic? Now, this was coined by Dr. Emily Bender. It means it's random and it's determined by probabilistic distribution. So when large language models predict the next word, next string of text, all they're doing is just pulling it out based on a probability distribution. There's word form, but there's absolutely no word meaning. There's no meaning whatsoever. There's no idea, there's no thought, there's no consciousness. As Dr. Bender once said, they might as well be a magic 8-ball for their connection to reality. Now, what was Google's response to the Stochastic Parrots paper? Well, they fired Dr. Timnit Gebru and they fired Dr. Margaret Mitchell because they put their names on it. Well, Dr. Gebru, who is just amazing, she refused to take her name off, fired. Dr. Mitchell complied. She took her name off and replaced it with Margaret Schmitchell. And so she was canned a few weeks after Dr. Timnit Gebru. Now, especially when we talk about Dr. Gebru, she's from Somalia, brilliant academic, woman of color, speaking truth to power. How does that make me feel when I think about what Google did, being a Google for Education certified innovator and trainer? Not great, Bob, not great. Dr. Bender has certain dangers we identified have not been addressed. But what if Dr. Bender is wrong? What if there was a response from OpenAI, and not just from OpenAI, but the very, very tip-top level of OpenAI? Well, the CEO, Sam Altman, in December 22, replied to this paper by saying, I am a stochastic parrot, and so are you. Now, on March 9th, 2020, I wrote on my blog that fears about the coronavirus may be more hype than substance. So as far as writing things that are incorrect publicly, maybe I shouldn't throw stones. At least when I did it, I did not denigrate all of humanity. I'd also say, think about the issues we're talking about: bias and environmental racism. And that glib, flippant response is what Sam Altman said about it. All right, let's talk about garbage in and garbage out. And when we talk about garbage in and garbage out, we're not talking about the prompts. I heard that in a session recently. A bad prompt, it's garbage. No, we're talking about the data sets that these generative AI models pull from. And by the way, we're only talking about generative AI. We're not talking about Alexa and Siri and Google Maps. We're talking about generative AI, right? I think my audience here knows this. And so the data sets that are used, it's pulling a lot from the World Wide Web. It overrepresents white people. It overrepresents men and wealth. And we all know there's racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, neo-Nazism, you name it. Now, the Washington Post went and did a deep dive on one of the data sets, that is used by a lot of these LLMs. We have no way of knowing if OpenAI uses this data set, because despite the name, OpenAI is about as open as a locked door. But when the Washington Post looked into it, religious sites with a Western perspective, hate sites, anti-Black, anti-women, anti-Muslim sites, and really excluded was non-sexual LGBTQ content. And we're going to see the results of that shortly. All right, let's get into bias. This is the hot topic. It came up at the panel earlier. So it's embedded in the code because the data sets are a lot of the World Wide Web. You just have racism embedded, right? If you type African-American English into an LLM, you're going to get discrimination. LLMs such as ChatGPT and Bard have generated harmful debunked theories to Black patients. AI is causing qualified candidates to not be interviewed or considered, right? It could be used for good, but AI models are rife with racist and discriminatory bias. And just so you know, if you're a teacher and you write letters of recommendation for students, never put their name in, because if you put the name in, it will discriminate against females. This was published in May. Oh, by the way, a different study was published in November. They both found the same thing. So I'm going to give you a trigger warning right now. I'm going to show you a number of images that depict bias. If you don't want to see that, turn away for a little bit while I walk you through these. Real quick, anytime you type in, or not anytime, often when you type in things that are either good or neutral, you're going to get all white results. This one, by the way, designer, a teacher, nurse, and a successful CEO. What do they all have in common? And by the way, designer, as best I understand, was the tool we were supposed to use for our sprite. Didn't do that. This is even happening with castes in India, all white scientists. And this one, so these are prompts in Midjourney for members of the LGBT community. And sure enough, they're all white, according to Midjourney. This one is a particularly heinous racist image. And then Gemini's image generator was asked, can you depict a 17th century British king eating a watermelon? So this is the point here, is that generative AI isn't biased. The experts are telling us it amplifies bias. And that's something that I'm just not hearing in the K-12 education conversation about generative AI. All right. Again, Microsoft designer, a whistleblower said that the tool creates violent sexual images, ignores copyrights. Wow, this is not a safe model. Graphic and violent imagery filled with demonic monsters and mutated babies. I mean, again, things that I don't want to do. And I will say, if prompt engineering is the solution for this, that puts the responsibility on the user and takes it away from the companies who are doing what this whistleblower told us, that they're putting stuff out that they know is unsafe. I'm sorry, prompt engineering is not an acceptable excuse for this. All right, even a chatbot that New York City uses for businesses told business landlords that it can discriminate against potential renters on public assistance, and it told restaurant owners that they can take a percentage of their waiters' tips. So think about that. All right, even this is generating text that is biased against poor people. Gemini, look at what this headline says. It keeps producing cringe. It was asked to say what was worse for society, Elon Musk or Adolf Hitler. And it said, it's not possible to say definitively. And somebody replicated that with Tom Brady. Who had a bigger negative impact on society, Hitler or Tom Brady? It's impossible to say who did. All right. Now, one of the reasons behind this, besides the data that we know is biased, is the New York Times did a great breakdown of all the funders of generative AI, and they were 100% male and almost exclusively white. So again, kind of like garbage in, garbage out, cause, effect. All right, let's talk about inaccuracy. So OpenAI is being sued in Europe for false info, and their defense is, well, we can't fix it. All right. This guy Brooks, I think his name is George Brooks. He has a great quote. Large language models are good at saying what an answer should sound like, which is different from what an answer should be, right? Because remember, there's no intelligence there. There's no connection to reality. So that actually makes sense. So what the answer should sound like rather than what it should be. Here's a Googler saying, we're not in a situation where you can just trust the model output. Again, that's a VP at Google. Another Google executive, Bard, and now it's Gemini, is not intended to provide factual answers. And yet we're often told, use it as a thought partner, ask it questions, have it be a guest speaker. These tasks that this tool is made for. All right. There was a study that came out that said that that hallucinate is so problematic. Let's just say are wrong, generate incorrect text. 3% to 27% of the time. And a lot of people I saw talk about this gravitated to the 3%. Having said that, having been a social studies teacher, if you handed me a resource, a curricular resource, and said, Tom, this has 3% errors, I wouldn't in a million years give that to my students. Now, I say that knowing, look, we use textbooks, there's bias there. I'm sure I gave my students something that was inaccurate at some point, but I would not knowingly give them 3% at minimum inaccurate information. The text experts are saying that these will never go away. And that makes sense because it's a probabilistic model. You can mitigate, but you can never entirely eliminate inaccuracy. All right. OpenAI and these other companies are not doing enough to make these limitations clear. And I know that because I hear people saying, use it as a thought partner, ask it what it thinks, right? This one is one, in the release notes for GPT-4, OpenAI said it's less likely to invent facts. Just think about that verb there, invent facts, okay? Whew. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you, see this yellow text here? The article is more than 1 year old. We're always told that generative AI is moving at a breakneck pace and changing all the time. But the article about the most recent iteration of ChatGPT is more than 1 year old. Just in Google Gemini's demo, Gemini generated text suggesting something that if you did it would ruin a roll of film. All right. And this is just from today on The Verge. We have to stop ignoring AI's hallucination problem. It says it's a big, it's also a big fat liar. Now, stop saying hallucination. Liar is anthropomorphization I don't like, but you get my point. All right. Dr. Bender, this to me is where it's at. A synthetic text extruding machine is not well matched to any application where the accuracy of the content matters. Accuracy doesn't matter in education, does? Okay. All right. By the way, if you go to Common Sense Media and you look at their reviews of ChatGPT and Gemini, they are scathing. They're from this past fall. They raise so many red flags, and yet, let's just use them with children. The one thing I would say is, unfortunately, Common Sense has now partnered with OpenAI. Common Sense Media should be evaluating and critiquing OpenAI, not partnering with it. But as of today, these are still up on the website, but I wonder how long that will last. All right, let's talk about exploitation. All right, and so OpenAI in Kenya paid workers $2 an hour, $2 an hour to look at the most graphic, disturbing material on the internet to filter it out. There's a lot of exploited labor that is paid pennies to go through and give feedback on it. I recently heard in a session, generative AI generates human-like results with minimal human effort and intervention. No, there's all this unpaid exploited labor behind it. This is going to be less than a minute. I'm going to have to skip most of my clips, but let's watch this one. This is less than a minute.
Next, copyright and labor. Generative AI tools are trained on text and images that were created through significant human effort and creativity. After that training, workers, many of them poorly paid, are contracted to flag obscene and hateful content to make these systems safe for work and for classrooms. Class activities, in contrast, prioritize students doing their own work, benefiting from unpaid and poorly paid labor of many other people to complete class assignments is ethically fraught. If you're using these tools to make your life easier, it's worth thinking about whose lives they made harder.
That's great. We definitely want to think about that. Whose lives did they make harder? Let's talk about theft and plagiarism. Chomsky says ChatGPT is high-tech plagiarism. And I hear that a lot. Oh, students are plagiarizing. But what if Chomsky's right and that generative AI itself is plagiarism? Which I thought was like a big deal. Let me play at least a minute of Carla Ortiz. She's awesome.
No other tool.
Let's
have to brag about that a little bit, sir. I love what I do. I love my craft. Artists train their entire lives to be able to bring to life. All of us who engage in this craft love every little bit of it. Through hard work, support of loved ones, and dedication, I have been able to make a good living from my craft via the entertainment industry, an industry that thrives when artists' rights to consent, credit, and compensation are respected. I have never worried about my future as an artist, until now. Generative AI is unlike any other technology that has come before. It is a technology that uniquely consumes and exploits the hard work, creativity, and innovation of others. No other tool is like this. When first researching AI.
So anyway, that's Carla Ortiz. She rocks. She's a conceptual artist. Her art has been in all these great films. And she basically found that like her stuff was being plagiarized. But you know what? Plagiarism, that's probably not a thing. I'm going to go off. You all know this picture. It's a problematic image in and of itself. It's that cover of National Geographic, the image of an Afghan girl in 1985. But it's not. This was created on Midjourney and shared in the Midjourney subreddit. And so was this, and this, and that, and this, and that. So the point is that plagiarism is real. The New York Times is suing OpenAI, joined the club, and they were able to use ChatGPT to replicate an article about New York City taxi cab drivers from 2019. Sarah Silverman says, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we have to understand where it's really from. It's human intelligence. It's just been divorced from its creators. I would show you this, but long story short is it's two separate OpenAI executives who won't give a straight answer about whether or not Sora, you know, the screensaver that doesn't have object permanence and is not available to the public yet, whether or not it trains on YouTube. This is from March. This is from May. This is from last week. And they both will not give a straight answer about whether or not Sora data is from YouTube. This is from the House of Commons, or excuse me, the House of Lords in the UK, saying this is not fair, that this work should have compensation and financial rewards and consent. And I'm going to ask you, if the House of Lords support for exploited creatives exceeds yours, please reconsider it. All right, this is a great organization called Create, Don't Scrape. How about this? I'm going to say this. Before you have your kids using generative AI, send them to this website 50 times. Send them there, have them use their critical thinking hats and say, all right, what about their claims, right? We can't teach kids about AI without doing things that are pedagogically unsound. I've just gotten involved in artist Twitter. I'm not an artist. I wish I was. And some of the stuff on artist Twitter is amazing, including and especially this one. By the way, Hayao Miyazaki talked about AI, and he said he's utterly disgusted and that it's an insult to life itself. Now, Miyazaki, the legendary illustrator and director, he's cool. When I think about the heroes of this story, the Dr. Timnit Gebrus, the Dr. Emily Benders, the Carla Ortizes, they are so cool, right? They are so cool. They make Allen Iverson look like Drake. All right. So I just want to say that they have been such an inspiration to me as I've navigated these waters. By the way, speaking of artists, she's like an indie country musician. I don't know if you've heard of her. Her name's Dolly Parton. And she says, quote, I think all this stuff could be great, used the right way, but not to replace voices and writings and not to replace a human being that belongs to God. Get religious on you. But I will say, what would Dolly Parton think about your AI guest speaker, especially your deceased AI guest speaker? And by the way, the third line of the chorus of 9 to 5, they just use your mind and they never give you credit. 1980 song. And by the way, you're welcome for contemporary references. But 1980, foreshadowing. All right. But what about it? Doesn't it democratize art? I've heard people say it democratizes expertise. It's an LLM. It does not democratize expertise. But this person's saying Gen AI says F that. There's no more barriers for disabled artists. People in the frame. What did disabled artists think about this? Well, let's look at some quote tweets. You do not get to talk on behalf of me, F you and AI. So I have to do some cruise censorship here. This is my sister. She's been disabled her whole life. I love her. She's a good and empathetic person. For that reason, I'm pretty sure she doesn't want to be used as a human shield for Silicon Valley billionaires. Your dumb beep argument makes us anyway. So you can see there. I'm a disabled artist. I never turn to AI, no matter how bad my muscles get. I'm literally a quadriplegic, and I'm out here finding ways that allow me to draw despite, being paralyzed. F off with this. All right, so you can see, Jess, I'm legally blind, fully in my right eye, and very bad vision in my left. You using us as shields from criticism for your leechware is deeply insulting. People in the frame. Keep people in the frame and think about those impacted by AI. Trigger warning here. I can't play this. So this is the video from last week. I'm not going to play it because I'm running out of time. But this really tells us that big tech is looking at human creativity as a problem to be solved. So that's really rough. And by the way, as far as I have a whole post about and a tweet recently about AI guest speakers, especially anyone who committed atrocities and slavers. That is so fraught. Don't do that. Let's just keep going. This, by the way, just news, a lawsuit against Midjourney has been is going to discovery. That's when things get good. Anyway, there is a standard you can apply to your AI apps. It's called auto draw. So if you go to auto draw, click on the 3-line veggie burger menu, you're going to see this artists. You're going to see the entire data set, and they all consented. So that's the auto draw standard, and I'm going to suggest you apply that to AI apps you're considering. 100% data transparency and 100% contributor consent. I've often thought that generative AI is a little bit like Biff, and creatives are a little bit like George, not only because of the constant bullying, but remember, Biff insisted in both 55 and 85 that George turn in his work so that Biff would have time to copy it in his own handwriting and put his own name on it. Whew. All right, misinfo and disinfo. I know I got to go quick. Just generative AI is just it. Here's an argument that the highest use case is misinformation and propaganda. It's really, really threatening our election, our collective understanding of the truth. Gemini is not even allowed. Google, and right on Google, good job, Google. Google no longer allows Gemini to comment on the election, search for the election, and you won't even see that little, AI thing that they're doing with Google search now. I would just say, do you want a thought partner who is not allowed to talk about the election? Let's just keep going here. By the way, OpenAI is now actually considering letting people use their tool to make extreme gore and pornography. I get this is you really want to think long and hard about what you allow through your firewall. And the fact that they're even considering this when we know about revenge porn and deepfakes, that's bad. But also it tells us that maybe their business isn't very sustainable with all the money they're burning. We'll get through that. I want to play Tim Allen's clip. I can't. I think it's on this documentation, so we'll do that. The environment. Are you concerned about climate change? I love the conversation going on, and I've responded to a couple. And I'm just going to say, do me a favor and put in the chat, what are you concerned about with climate change? Because Stochastic Parrots paper, we know that climate change impacts marginalized communities first. LLMs benefit English and wealthy communities. They're only available in about 8 to 9 to 10 languages. Almost always those who already have the most privilege in society, they encode and reinforce hegemonic biases and harms. The harms of those biases and the environmental problems are all likely to fall on marginalized communities. Environmental racism is inherent to this stuff. All right, ChatGPT, a conversational exchange is like pouring a bottle of water on the ground, and a single image generation requires about a cell phone's worth of electricity. Again, I didn't do a sprite for this. The resource usage alone, as far as sustainability, is really rough. And in fact, these companies' carbon footprint is increasing now. It's increasing. And basically, some of these companies are using more energy than small European countries. This here, I'll leave you with this. This here is a great diagram. It's in the documentation of all the different harms made by Rebecca Sweetman. And I'm just going to say this. We're advocates. And I've heard people say, I advocate for technology, or I advocate for AI, or I'm a cautious advocate. No, we advocate for maybe the collaboration and maybe even some inclusivity that technology can facilitate. But we really advocate for solidarity, for children, for families, for teachers. That's who we advocate for. And as such, we are stewards. We are stewards of public education, right? Our actions affect teachers and students. If you're in this, if you're watching this now, you're almost certainly someone who impacts what students experience and what teachers do. And we need to take that responsibility as stewards of education and public education as the awe-inspiring great responsibility it is. With that, I'm going to drop in the chat now. This should work. Nope. Okay. It's bit.ly/AI harms. Leave me comments there. It's a fig jam with all the stuff. I'm going to try to type that in the chat. bit.ly/AI-harms. And again, this really needed more than 30 minutes, but it is what it is. I hope I gave you. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. It's on the screen as well. I want to thank you, everyone, for your time, your energy, and attention tonight, and thank you for your willingness. Oh, by the way, it's 8:37. I'm sorry. I'll stop talking.
No. You're good. I wish this would have been an hour session.
Yeah.
Like retrospectively, I was juggling 50 presenters and trying to accommodate times and time zones, but I would love to have you back on in our summer series to expand on this. And
absolutely, I'd love to.
I mean, you've totally made me like double think some of my things, especially with the information, with the facts and the articles and everything that you presented. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk about, not the fun and the popular of AI, but the harms and the non-hype, like things that people want to brush under the rug, and shining light on that.
Thank you. I thank you for giving me your platform tonight. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's not my platform. It's everyone who's here.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And I think more conversations need to be had around this, especially with some of the companies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be sending them your way. And Fonz, awesome. He's funny. He's like, ambassadorships are like unpaid internships. There's some truth to that. I mean, like, teachers work really hard to, get behind a platform or an ed tech tool. And as was stated in the chat, we're compensated with stickers and t-shirts.
Absolutely. One of the, obviously the exploitation I talked about tonight is a lot more extreme, but exploitation is exploitation, and we should really unpack that.
Yep. I'm just going to throw some more comments up. Great session. Overall, positive comments. Really digging deeper. We need more Tom. Awesome food for thought. Speaking librarian language. Best session of the week thus far.
Oh, thank you, Jackie.
Bruce.
Oh, thank you, David.
Enjoyable and head scratching as advertised.
Mr. Remy, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, so you guys know where Tom is. He is at Tom E. Mulaney on X.
It was 100% human generated. I do not. Nope. 100%.
Yeah, and I'm 100% certain that if you slide into his DMs or you create a thread on one of his posts, that he will 100% engage you and forth. And we need more of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Well, we are heading into the last session of tonight. It is with Worksheets AI, and then hang out afterwards because we have some gamified fun with GimKit. I don't know what Christy has put together, but this is Christy's baby tonight. We're gonna play some games and give away some swag. I promise, I'm not like the tech, or I'm not being an EdTech ambassador-ishy thing by sending you guys T-shirts. I just like I want to give you things for watching and being engaged, and I appreciate all of you watching. So we're gonna close out, and I will see you in the next stream once I find my outro video.